Welcome back to The Guy Doing Things. This is episode 47, and I spoke to the African CEO. We chatted everything about leadership, how to manage a team, and how to create a great culture. This builds a bit on my CEO session series that I've been doing the last few episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope wherever you're listening from, you're in a comfortable position. You're just chilling out and you're ready for a super chilled vacation. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing wherever you're listening from or watching from. And I look forward to seeing your comments on this episode and on whatever I should do in the future. I love your suggestions, so keep them coming. And I'll see you at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, it almost feels like COVID again, doing all of these virtual interviews. I'm being joined in the Guy Doing Things studio, all the way from Stellenbosch. Welcome to the Guy Doing Things, Naison.
Thank you. Thanks, Dalton.
Naison, your other name is the African CEO. Tell me a bit more about that, and how did you start doing that, and what are you doing with the African CEO?
That's a loaded question, but let me try to break it down. So I started off the podcast last year in August, and the intention was just to interview entrepreneurs and CEOs and just to understand how they built their business. And the reason for that is a bit of backstory. So I actually, long story short, studied engineering, worked as an engineer, started a business while I was studying. Fast forward a bit, COVID hit, practiced as an engineer, fast forward again to 2023, exited that business. And during that transition period, I was looking for, what's next. And at that time, I was coaching student entrepreneurs here at the Launch Lab. And the questions that they were asking was very much on a basic level. Hey, I have this idea. How do I turn it into a business? Hey, I want to actually grow my business. How do I get more customers, marketing, all of these things that I had experience in because of my first business, running a travel and transportation company. That's also a side story. But because of the questions that they were asking, it planted seeds for me to, essentially provide some sort of education platform where I could interview these founders and we could share this to a wide audience. And so that was really the intention about starting. And so over time, I managed to, use my network, and I started to interview people here in Stellenbosch, and then expanded to Cape Town, expanded to other cities in South Africa, and then expanded to other countries.
Wow.
Over time, what we noticed was that people weren't really interested in how to build a business and like the technical stuff about building a business. They were more interested in the people. How did that person have this challenge and overcome it? The rags to riches stories, really the adversity, and really people being vulnerable and sharing really how they overcame those challenges and became a success. So we actually pivoted the type of people that we have on and the guests that we have on to now interviewing impactful Africans and experts in their fields to essentially provide inspiration and education. So that's in a nutshell where we're at with the podcast.
It sounds like a super cool project, and I actually stumbled, thank you to the YouTube algorithm, stumbled upon your YouTube stuff, and then I added you on LinkedIn and just checked you out. Now, the reason that I asked you to be on the podcast is because I am also exploring a bit of a long-term challenge. So my podcast usually has to do with a lot of challenges, but it's usually in and out, 30 days and out, or a big once-off challenge. But this one, the CEO session challenge, was I one day want to be a CEO, and I kind of asked myself, how do I reverse engineer that? And I came up with CEO sessions to spend time with 12 CEOs during this year and ask them questions that I feel would make me a better leader. So that's why I have you on today, and I feel you have like this whole bank of questions that people have been asking you. So I'm sure the questions that I sent to you beforehand None of them were too strange, hopefully. The first one being a very simple question: why did you become a leader?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And for me, I don't like to isolate leadership as just, oh, I became this leader. It's always entrepreneurship first and becoming this, founding a company to essentially now label myself as this entrepreneur, right? So being this
Yeah,
entrepreneur, part of that is leadership and part of that is being a good leader.
yeah,
So firstly, before I go on, does that make sense?
yes, definitely.
Cool. So going along this entrepreneurship journey, part of that is actually like being a leader because you're not only responsible for yourself. If you want to grow your company and actually, build something that's really scalable and really big, you have to learn how to become a good leader. And these are
Yeah,
skills that we're not taught. And so the why for me is really coming from a place of the like what I want to achieve from a long-term point of view,
yeah,
and the why the leadership part is more the qualities that I have learned to embody. And I'll give you
yeah,
an example. So I feel like all leaders have to be driven and have to have a deep why of why they do things.
yeah,
And for me, I feel like you go through seasons in life, and in this season of my life, I am really trying to make an impact while also creating financial freedom for myself, for my family, and
yeah,
really to essentially make this big impact and make lots of money doing it. So essentially,
yeah,
like that's where I'm at like a drive point of view, and so I'm matching like my internal purpose. The medium for my purpose right now is the African CEO, but
yeah,
10, 15 years time, who knows what's gonna come of that. But
yeah,
in a nutshell, like that's my why for this season of my life.
yeah. What I'm hearing from that is um, actually leadership. You stumbled upon leadership, and I don't mean not with purpose or intentionality. I think when you embark on a journey, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever field you find yourself in, I noticed that the different people that I've interviewed, or out of the finance sector, the medical sector. I actually interviewed someone in the Parel in the Western Cape. He's in the wine industry, and
Nice.
all of them, yeah, that was I would love that job. But and I think the thing about leadership, it kind of you stumble upon it when you're honing your craft. So if I understand you correctly, is it something that's kind of you became a leader because you had to? Did I understand that right? And is that something that you kind of realized and you said, okay, I have to become a leader to be a good entrepreneur?
100%. I think that to add to your point, it first started with leading myself.
Yeah,
Do I have, the qualities of what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur? And, part of that was becoming a good leader. So cool. What are the qualities of good leader? And embodying those qualities to essentially now, you know, to continue to, grow the company. But it starts with first, how can I best lead myself on a daily basis? And
yeah.
that's, really where I think everyone should start.
Yeah. One of my favorite leaders, Craig Groeschel, always says everyone wins when the leader gets better. So if you're a good leader and you can lead yourself well and you grow, everyone wins. Now, talking about everyone winning, you're in entrepreneurship and you've started many companies or work with different companies. I want to ask you, what are important drivers to you for a good culture in a team? So obviously you've worked in different industries, and good culture I've discussed in the previous episode, or previous CEO session and the Guy Doing Things episode. I discussed it with the previous leader to say good culture, in my opinion, drives good results. So what are important drivers to you that you've seen through the years of good culture?
I think the first point is a bottom up approach as opposed to a top down. And I'll give you an example. So I worked at this engineering firm, and it was just a 4 month contract. And one of the year end functions was to go, sorry, year end kind of celebration. Yeah, let's just call
Yeah.
it a celebration. So it was to go hunting and actually hunt
It's
animals.
so South African.
So South African, but also very much a culture thing, like in
Yeah.
the perhaps Afrikaans culture. So if you didn't grow
Yes.
up in that culture, it's very new to you, right?
Yeah.
And so I joined after they went on this trip, but hearing from the other employees in the team, more than 60% of the employees in that team did not want to go hunting, did not want to go spend their
Yeah.
time bonding in that way. Now,
Yeah.
nothing against hunting or like the tradition and the culture of that, but
Yeah.
that's an example of something that the leadership of the company wanted to do. So then now they're pushing that to everyone as a bonding
Yeah.
exercise, which I feel
Yeah.
is not a really good approach. And then you get, of course, your employees complaining about it, and of course, that's
Yeah.
not a good look for you. So I really think it
Yeah.
has to be a very an objective way of, like, take that example of a year-end function, or maybe it's like having things in place on a monthly basis where collectively staff get to decide what do they want to do. We
Yeah.
implemented something which was a Friday lunch, and the intention of it was just to sit together and chat, not about
Yeah.
work, about anything that interests you and anything that's going on in your life. And that
Yeah.
really, allows you to get to know others outside of a work environment. And every Friday, everyone got to choose like what type of meal we would get. So the one week it
Okay.
would be like Thai food, the one week it would be, fast food, whatever it may be. But
And are
those
these
small.
people who choose, are they out, from different cultures? So you've got different cultures picking the meals for the week. Oh, that's brilliant. I love it.
That's correct. So, like, everyone's from different culture, but the point is it's bottom up approach and not top down.
Yes.
I think that's
Okay.
the first thing. The second thing that I want to mention is also a conducive environment in which employees thrive. That could be perhaps a hybrid situation, either work from home or work from the office. Flexible time. So, we all have things to do. We all have to renew our license at the office, and that takes
Yeah.
time out of our working schedule. We all have to perhaps go grocery shopping. I mean, now with 60/60 and delivery services makes things easier. But the point is that we all have these admin tasks that we have to do, and rather than perhaps waiting after work and having to go through that rush, or just doing things
Yeah.
on weekend, why not have like flexible time where employees could then do those things during work and not let that be a stress, and get that taken care of so that can focus on their work and not think about, oh flip, it's 5 o'clock, I have to stop my work and go to the shop now because I've got a
Yeah.
family. So really having things like that in place.
Yeah. No, it's a great answer, and I think it's also very applicable to the South African context. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff we get from America, but the culture is just very different. And I think the big thing for us is adapting a modern work culture, but within the framework that we have in South Africa. And what I take from what you're doing is from America, we get nap pods and free food and electric cars or whatever. And in some contexts in South Africa, that's just not going to work. But what I understand from what you're saying is bottom down or bottom up allows you to understand your employees and understand their motivations and then meet them there. And that's something that's amazing. So as you can see, I love Lego, and that's they're obviously a Danish company, but the way that they solve problems or the way that they kind of relax, and you need to buy into that culture when you join the company, is through play. So the way that they solve complex problems is physically they sit down on a mat. So you're not even sitting on chairs. You're going down onto a mat and you play with Lego and solve problems in that way. And that to me is a massively cool indicator of a good culture. So no,
Definitely.
thanks for sharing your input on that.
One more thing that I'd like to add is incentives. So,
Okay.
maybe this ties into perhaps, a high performing culture, but, incentives drive behavior. So if you want to have a
Yeah.
good culture, what can you incentivize the team? What can that incentive be? Once more, collectively chosen. So if that incentive happens to be a wine and paint evening or wine and paint Friday
Yeah.
afternoon after hitting certain OKRs and certain goals. Like, what can that incentive be for your team that firstly the
Yeah.
team wants to do, not only one person wants to do.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing, and that actually leads me to my next question, because I wanted to ask, how important is performance to you? Because obviously, as a CEO, you get measured by performance. If we make money, you stay. If we don't make money, you go. Um, but but and incentives, I think it's a double-edged sword to me from my perspective. I haven't been a CEO yet, but incentives to me seem like a carrot in front of the nose type of thing, where you're gonna just keep on chasing, and you get this dangerously high performing culture. As to the good space, there's a good place for performance. So how important is it to you, and how do you get performance out of your team? I think you mentioned incentives, and a good working culture. But are there anything else that you want to add, that if performance is important to you? If you say, no, we make companies and we just chill and see how it goes, and we play in the meadows and make snow angels.
Yeah, I think you have to you have to understand what type of business you're building. If you want to build a lifestyle business, then perhaps playing in the snow and making snowmen is good for you. But if you really want to build uh, a scalable venture that
Yeah.
can actually serve many regions, then you have to put in the work. But to
Yeah.
your point, so yeah, we talked about incentives, and I think that's a good way to drive performance, because we can go into the psychology of what drives people, but
Yeah.
and why it actually works. But I think another way is just leading by example. So
Yeah.
if I'm expecting people to work 80 hours per week, 100 hours per week, am I working 80 hours per week, 100 hours per week?
Yeah.
And I think something that I had to learn is, yes, leading by example, but not expecting others to do what I do. And let me explain this point. Yes, the bar and the standard is really high, but at the end of the day, I'm the founder, and this essentially nobody feels the same way the founder feels about their business.
Yeah.
It's
It's your
like,
baby.
exactly, right? You've heard that analogy before. It's like you are literally raising this thing into the world and you want
Yeah.
it to become successful. And even though there's people that are also want that, there's just there's something deeper that just drives founders to, it's not, I don't really worry about working on a Friday night or a Saturday or sometimes a Sunday. Like, there's not even a thing
Yeah.
for me, because I understand the long-term game and I understand what I'm building. Whereas
Yeah.
perhaps someone who, is also invested in the vision is okay with just doing them Monday to Friday and will go the extra mile, but still wouldn't, perhaps feel the same way about it. So it's important to not have those type of expectations on your employees and your team, but
Yeah.
you can still set the bar really high and you can still have the team meet those expectations. I just
Yeah.
feel like it has to be very realistic,
Yes.
and really, there's lots of factors to put targets and OKRs in place.
Yeah. I've seen, and this was a bad experience, and I think bad experiences can teach you a lot. It can also, harm you or make you better. But there was an experience where KPIs and incentives were communicated very loosely and very unrealistically, in a space where I was involved at. And I think that's why I want to ask the performance question, because obviously you already said the it should be realistic, but can I add that it should be relevant to your industry, and it should be communicated. It should be part of the culture. If incentives is not part of your culture, I think you can get into that danger zone And I want to ask this: how do you avoid the danger zone for incentives, where either you push your employees to burnout or they start pushing each other to get that incentive or to reach that bar? And how do you consistently communicate? Sorry, I'm asking one of those heavy loaded questions again. The second question is, how do you then communicate throughout the year in a way that you keep on consistently keeping your employees accountable throughout the year? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Uh, Let me start with the second question first. I think that is pretty simple when you have a good system in place and you have good tracking
Yeah,
in place. And those could be objectives and key results. So yes, you have your big KPIs that you need to hit, but on a monthly or a quarterly basis, you have these objectives and key results. And I feel like that's such a helpful tool to essentially track short-term performance.
yeah,
And we used to have this. So currently at the African CEO, we were a team of four, and now we're a team of two and one outsourced. So when we were a team of four, like there was a weekly meeting to
yeah,
essentially see. We use it as a reflection session. Essentially, that's what it
yeah,
was, and we
yeah,
discussed different things in that meeting. But what stood out for me was these are your quarterly goals. We always set quarterly goals, OKRs.
yeah,
What have you done in this past week that's moving you forward towards that? And of course, based on that, you have your results and your metrics that you are tracking based on your quarterly goals. Are you closer or further away from those metrics? If you
yeah,
are in the red zone, what do you need help with? What do you need support with? Why are you in the red zone? What haven't you been doing? Or perhaps are things taking longer than it should? Are things taking longer than expected? We need to understand why you're in the red zone so we can move you to the green zone so that you ensure that you're on track or even, above, beyond progress. So
yeah,
that I think is such an important tool, and of course having those weekly meetings to keep each other accountable and essentially ensure that you're in the loop with what your team is doing. Because I don't believe in micromanagement, but that's a good way for me to understand where everybody's at, so that you don't get
yeah,
to the end of the quarter and oh flip, you haven't reached your goals. Why?
yeah,
Uh, I think initially it has to be trial and error, because
yeah.
if and I'll give an example. So when I started off, I was editing my own videos, right? So I know how long things take. So when I
Yes.
onboarded, yeah, you can relate to that. So when I onboarded an editor, firstly, I had the system in place. So training is easy. So that person could just come on board, follow the steps. I'm not saying that cool, they have to do that exactly, but at least you have the recipe, and then you take that and you improve it based on, your, because I mean, you're the expert in the field. I'm not an expert
Yeah,
in video editing, but here's is a framework that you can follow. So I knew how long things took me to do, and I know, for example, what needs to be done. So
yeah,
because I've done it before, that was easy to now be like, cool, it's it's okay for me to expect you to do 3 videos a week, edit 3 videos a
yeah,
week, because I mean, it's how long it's going to take. Um, but if you haven't done it before, I think that's where trial and error comes in, and really relying on your team and trusting them. And if they're saying that something takes a certain amount of time, um, it's either if you're not happy with that, it's either you ask why and how can things be done quicker. Always question, and always
yeah,
ask the question, how can this be done quicker? What do you need to ensure that you feel supported so that things can be done quicker and you achieve your goal on time. So I think
yeah,
just challenging what they say, and of course it's always a give and take. It's not this. Um, it's not a one-way road. There has to be two-way communication between leadership and the team,
yeah,
because the leader, you don't want narcissistic leaders. It's my way or the highway.
yeah,
Because what happens then is, of course, resentment in the team, and that's a toxic culture. Because employees are then speaking behind your back and they're complaining and they're, playing the victim. You want things addressed in that room so that you can move forward.
Yeah, and that I feel that also then prevents people redlining, because if you work cohesively as a team, you know that performance is a given. Um, it's important that you feel, okay, I've got 10 things to do. I'm only getting to 8. I'm going to communicate early. I'm not going to be judged for not being able to do 10. I know the performance in the 8 is going to be brilliant. The leadership is communicating with me. They're being transparent. So yeah, it sounds like a great flow, and that's a good way to prevent redlining.
Mm.
So we obviously I've touched on a few leadership. I have experienced a few leadership roles before, but I haven't reached my goal or my pinnacle. So the next question is for someone like me or younger. What can future leaders do now to ensure that they have the best impact when they eventually become leaders or reach that pinnacle?
I think step one is always finding that drive, finding your why. And
Yes.
step two is the internal work so that you can become more self aware. I think that we need more self aware leaders. We need more self aware people and we need more self aware leaders. And self
Yes.
awareness, I can't exactly give you a definition, but my understanding of it is like the ability to understand what you're feeling and manage that, the ability to see something happening on the outside, i.e., the external environment, and react in a way that's productive, that's progressive, that's calm. You're not reacting in a rash or in an emotional way. You're acting in a
Yeah.
very logical and um, you're able to make decisions better. I think that
Yeah.
is self-awareness, one's ability to manage oneself. This is so underestimated, under talked about. I feel like more people should speak about one's ability to manage oneself because it all
Yeah.
starts there. I think that is what we need more of. I'm sure
Yeah.
we can go into other things like learning about becoming a charismatic person, like learning about people, being empathetic, like all of these qualities matter. But once more, that's all internally. You can only control what you can do. Sorry, you can't control the outside. You can only control your own actions and your own
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a saying that I loved. We like to play the blame game sometimes, people, but what I heard kind of changed this perspective. It wasn't my fault, but it's my responsibility, and to have that change of
Mm.
heart to say whatever's happening now wasn't my fault, but it is now my responsibility to make a change. And I think that's the big thing, that's being a future leader or aspiring to be a future leader, to say there are leadership crises all around us, or we see bad leadership around us. We can just easily blame those people and then sit back, or we can be the change. And it
I
brings me
think
to my last question. Sorry. Before I do that, I'm rushing into the last question.
so. Vincent, I just wanted to add to that. I think that's such a good point that you mentioned there. And one thing that I wanted to mention was the authenticity of people and of leaders. I think that people see through inauthentic people, and if you're not,
Yeah.
authenticity is essentially just being yourself, right? But you can't be yourself if you don't know yourself. If you don't know
Yeah.
what you tick, if you don't know, if you're not secure in yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that we also should highlight is being authentic. And
Yeah.
there's so many people that I know of that are not authentic because of there's a lot of fear that they're experiencing, and a lot of trauma and challenges that they went through in the past that um, essentially forced them to, or now then they're in a place where they very much there's a lot of pride and it's a lot about what other people think, as opposed to just truly being themselves, being the authentic self. And I think that if you can be yourself, you allow others to be in a relaxed and comfortable state. I think
Yeah.
that's really how, when, and how people thrive.
Yeah. If we can take a snippet out of a Dr. Seuss quote, I'm going to probably butcher it, but he says, "Today you are you, and no one can be youer than you." So that to me, kind of, I think it was Cat in the Hat. But yeah, it just shows if you are you, and no one can be you, and that also is the kind of leadership flavor that maybe a place needs, a company needs the authentic version of whoever the leader is going to be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think
Before
about.
we, sorry, I think I kind of want to go to the next question and then we just chat. But I love the chat, so I apologize if I kind of
There's
steamroll to the next question.
uh,
Sorry, you
that's
were about to say.
yeah, if you think about all these successful companies and businesses that have, been part of our generation and even before our generation, if you think about those founders, all of them are so unique in their own different way, but all
Yeah,
of them were being authentic to themselves. Not
yeah,
None of them were the same. You can't say that, a Mandela was the same as a Steve Jobs.
yeah,
But they both, did incredible things. And I
yeah,
think that's,
yeah.
yeah, being yourself.
No, definitely. Speaking about being yourself, and I think some people not being themselves. This is kind of a serious question. I think, or it was just out of curiosity. Do you think South Africa is in a leadership crisis? And if so, how do we solve it? Because we're not going to talk about the problem. I don't want to focus on the problem. If you say no, then it's fine, and then we go on. But if you say yes, how do we solve it?
Yeah, I guess there's only one answer. But crisis is a big word. I wouldn't say crisis because I'm an optimist. And so I look at opportunities, and where others see problems, I see opportunities and possibility. In terms of the people, having over the past couple months spoke to and interviewed some influential people in the public sector, they are really good people. I think a challenge is the past and,
Yeah,
leadership in the past, whether it's at a public level or just influential people. The bad apples that essentially have resulted in a perception that now society has that, oh, there's a leadership crisis. But I
yeah,
really feel that currently there are some good people doing good things. And I think that another issue is more awareness should be created about these good people and what they're doing.
yeah,
And I think that if more awareness is created, and I'll give you an example. So I recently spoke to Mteto Nyati, who is a chairman of the board of ESCOM. And he was super candid with me and very transparent. And he really shared what went on behind the scenes of how essentially they, rescued ESCOM and the energy crisis. And now essentially there's no load shedding anymore.
yeah,
And I think what I gathered from that was there are good people that really want the nonsense to stop, want the corruption to stop, want the country to move forward, want economic prosperity.
yeah,
So from that point of view, like my answer is just more awareness need to be created about what these people are doing and what the plans are. So there's the entire public is in the loop and can support that. And I think that
yeah,
is really key. Of course, like we can talk about all the challenges and issues, and we're still very much developing country. Our currency is not as strong as the dollar and the euro, but I feel like we're getting there.
yeah,
And there's lots of positives that are currently happening. There's lots of opportunities. Tech ecosystem is booming. There's so many innovations coming out of the country. Like Cape Town, honestly, there's a Airbnb crisis, right?
yeah,
There's a
yeah. It's
accommodation.
crazy.
So like this, I mean, yes, that's of course not the best for us locals that want to, move to Cape Town and stuff. But if you look
Yeah,
at the bigger, the effect of that, it's really positive.
yeah. No, definitely. Nason, I feel you are part of the solution doing the African CEO. Where can people go to learn more about what you do, and where can they follow and like and subscribe so that they can also be part of this amazing movement?
Yeah, thank you. I think the first place is our podcast. So like and subscribe and share. Of course,
Yes.
it's like. So I think that's the best way. I'm very much an advocate for local content and people pushing out content from a local lens. So keep
Yeah.
doing what you do. So the podcast is
Thank
one
you so much.
place. We're launching the second version of our membership next year. First version was launched at the beginning of this year, and it's really just to test and to understand, from a tech point of view. So essentially, the business is podcast, it's a membership, and we do events. So the membership
Yeah.
we launched at the beginning of the year. That was really just to learn more about who our audience is, what really the challenges are, what do they want, and second version will be rolling out next year. We're also having
Awesome.
an event in February. It's called the African Creator. So just check out our socials to keep in the loop with that. That's in partnership with some cool companies doing some big things. But yeah, we'll share more about that in the coming weeks and months.
Awesome. Nathan, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I feel wiser already. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Keep on doing good work. And thanks for joining us. I would love to be, I'm punting myself now, but I would love to be on your podcast as well one day. But thanks so much for your time and all the best for what you're doing.
Cool. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for this. This is cool.